Morning, comrade. Good morning, comrades, members of the media, friends, brothers and sisters. I'd like to welcome those online to the first official press conference of the leader of the opposition, Brother Thorne. I'd like to make at the outset a few excuses. Comrades Dujon and Comrade Watson are both running late, and one may not come. Dujon is lecturer at the University in the field of humanities, and today is one of the days she's invigilating, so she's running a little bit late, but she's come. And Senator Watson has professional engagement this morning and is unlikely to be here. But those who are here with us are not only here physically, but they're here in spirit. There are a lot of things that are happening in Barbados, and the leader of the opposition thought it wise to have a conference and where he can speak to Barbadians through the questions offered by members of our vibrant press. So without any further ado, I'd like to say welcome again to all, and I'm turning you over to Comrade Thorne.
Thank you very much, Derek. Good morning. Good morning to the media. Good morning to Barbados. Good morning to the Democratic Labour Party. Good morning to our audience, which is local, and citizens in the diaspora. Good morning to you as well. This today offers us an opportunity to welcome the public to the office of the Leader of the Opposition. I'd first like to thank the Clerk of Parliament, Mr. Pedro Eastman, for outfitting us in this very spacious accommodation. As you are aware, Parliament provides the offices of the Leader of the Opposition, and you may be aware that the traditional office on the premises of Parliament is not available, and that explains why we're down here on HINK'S Street. And we want the public to know where we are and to feel welcome to these premises at all times. We sit in opposition to the government, not for the sake of opposing, but for the sake of giving voice against wrongdoing in government. That's why we're here, to remain vigilant, always to scrutinize the actions of a government. And as I've said, not to oppose for the sake of opposing, but we are a constitutional body with a mandate to be a watchdog, so to speak, on the actions of the government. So we are that constitutional voice in opposition to government, and particularly in opposition to government wrongdoing. Let me clarify and introduce on my left, Senator Ryan Walters, a young man, as you are aware, who is a member of the Democratic Labour Party. He was a candidate in the 2022 election. Of course, I was introduced by Derek Allen. Derek is the executive assistant at these offices. Mr. David Boeing will also be present at this office as lead political assistant, and Mr. Kimar Stewart and Miss Petra King will be connected to general office. Those absent are Senator Watson, who informed me this morning that she has a prior professional engagement. Miss Felicia Dujon, I think Felicia is a third vice president of the party. Felicia is a lecturer at the University of the West Indies in the Faculty of Humanities, and she has a specialty as well in human rights. And I think she's the third vice president of the party, as I've said. Felicia is invigilating this morning, but she's promised us that she will grace us with her presence as soon as she can get away, and hopefully before this conference ends. So that those are the introductions. We want the public to feel free access to these premises, so that we can generally discuss the goings on in Barbados. So much is happening in Barbados. And over the last 2 years, there was no voice in Parliament. And we now have 3 voices in Parliament, 1 in the lower house, 2 in the upper house. And I think Barbadians have generally rejoiced at that fact. Rejoice not because they simply have those 3 voices in Parliament, but because they felt that there is a lot going on in government that goes unacknowledged within Parliament. And that is why we're here. We're here to acknowledge the wrongdoing in government. And seriously, we're here to prepare ourselves as a party to become the next government. And about that, we're unapologetic. That's why we're here. We're here to impress the public that we can and we are capable and we're able to constitute the next government of this country. I anticipate that there'll be questions in relation to goings on in the party. We welcome that as well. I mean, it's a democracy and you're entitled to have free and fair access to information. The information which I will give you up front is this, that the Constitution of Barbados, I'll say what you know, but I need to say it all the same. The Constitution of Barbados describes me as the opposition leader of this country. The Constitution of the Democratic Labour Party describes me as the political leader of the Democratic Labour Party. I want to assure Barbadians that I come to both offices with a sense of humility. But I want to say that humility does not mean weakness. It does not mean that I should be apologetic about leadership. It does not mean that I should be reluctant in leadership. It means that I should be firm, that I should be strong, that I should be resolute, and that I should be fair and just, and that I should come with some moral content. I insist, and I think the people of Barbados now insist, in the context of what this country is experiencing, that the occupation of office in government must be imbued with moral content. Yes, leadership is not about, it ought not to be about an ability to cut down and to be ruthless. Because I've seen that too often. I've seen in the media, if you don't mind me saying this, that a lot of leadership is judged by its inclination to be ruthless. And that is not leadership. Leadership must have a moral content. It must be compassionate. It must be fair and it must be just. And that is how I come to this office. I can assure you that is how Senator Walters comes to this office. And Senator Watson as well. That is what we offer this country. So I expect your questions as to the goings on in the party, and I promise you, as many answers as I will give you, I will answer you honestly. Yes? But let me come now to how we will organize ourselves. We have 3 parliamentarians, as I said, 1 in the House of Assembly and 2 in the Senate. We propose to, let me say, I don't necessarily believe in the concept of a shadow cabinet. Sometimes I think it is pompous, it is pretentious. And if we are going to be accusing the government, as we still are, of having a cabinet that is too large, I don't think it suits our purpose. And indeed, I think it is contradictory for us to take, if there are 27 ministers, to take up 27 of our people and say, oh, you shadow this one or you shadow that one. What we propose to do, we propose to divide all areas of government in between the 3 of us, myself and the 2 senators, and each of us will be a chairperson over those portfolios, and those portfolios will be extended to spokespersons across the party, candidates, potential candidates, persons of interest, supporters of the Democratic Labour Party, professionals, specialists in the areas. And I want to boast to Barbados now that in the past few months, we have attracted such high quality individuals, not necessarily high quality in terms of academia, but high quality in terms of moral content. We have attracted good Barbadians, Barbadians with an interest in this country, Barbadians who want a voice in this country, and we are offering that voice to Barbadians at this high level of this country's governance. As I said, we are constitutional office, and we are extending constitutional office. Literally, they can come here, and politically, the persons who have the interests of this country at heart. So that is how we are going to be responding to government, through our 3 parliamentary voices, and that those voices will be extended among a number of persons of expertise and interest, and not only expertise and interest, but experience. As I've said, we will not be focusing exclusively on academia. We are focusing on Barbadians of experience and knowledge, because not all knowledge is born within academia. A lot of knowledge springs from experience, and a lot of knowledge, and all knowledge indeed, must be respected. So that we will have research and policy teams, as I've said, under the supervision, the chairmanship of Senator Walters, Senator Watson, and myself. And that is how we will approach the issue or the question of opposing government and exposing government policy. That's how we will be approaching it, with a very broad-based team. But at the apex of that team will be our parliamentary representatives. So I'm not going to bore you with the various portfolios. You know what the portfolios in government are. I would just, at this point, like to say to you that, as I've said earlier, I think it is worth repeating. We have a lot of work to do. There's something happening in Barbados that remains a matter of concern. Since I have come to this office, I've had so many calls. And one of the interesting things about those calls is that people are given a religious and spiritual interpretation to our emergence as a parliamentary group. People are saying it seems as if God has had a hand in it. And I don't scoff at that, because Barbadians are very religious people. All of us in this room were born, I think, in Christian religion. We are steeped in that. And our parents didn't send us there by accident. They didn't send us there by ritual. That is where they sent us. And that is where our moral content became constituted. That is where it was born. And when Barbadians give spiritual and religious interpretation to events, please take them seriously. This is a country that is known for its decency. This is a country that is known for its respect for morality, not only in the church, but in government. As I've said earlier, and I'll repeat it, we have reached a situation in this country where we now, some of us now believe that the definition of a politician is a man or woman who is capable or who has the capacity only for ruthlessness, destroying lives, manipulating people, institutions. That is what we have come to accept as the prototypical or the stereotypical politician. We need to remove ourselves from that. We need to return morality and decency and honesty and integrity back into our politics. And that is what the Democratic Labour Party is offering this country in opposition. And that is what this Democratic Labour Party is offering this country as a potential governing party. And we're very serious about our intention to govern this country, not to govern ruthlessly, but to govern in tandem with people. Because another aspect of governance and government in this country now is the focus, the emphasis on one person. You have something as simple as a town hall meeting in a parish. One voice. Somebody speaks on behalf of cabinet. One voice. You open in your constituency, a fish market in your constituency, one voice. The representative does not get a chance to have his name on the plaque. One voice. That is not the democratic tradition that Barbados has known and has loved. That runs counter to the value systems, the political value systems entrenched, that have been entrenched in this country. And this Democratic Labour Party intends to change that. This Democrat, now the irony is that this is a government of record numbers of consultants. It is clear to us that this government does not consult. And I'll give you an example of that. The ongoing issue with the Drax lands in St. George. Here it is. The government announced this to you a few days ago that they're going to pay £3 million for the lands at Drax Hall, I think it is called. A few days later, in its typical style of vacillation, the government changes its position. Again, government must be firm, resolute, moral, and fixed as the Northern Star. A few days later, government changes its position. How can you trust? How can you have faith in a government that changes its position as often as it does? And Drax is not the only issue. But what comes to light here is that government has a consultant on reparations. Government makes the decision, announces the decision to Barbadians. And then the consultant on reparations prescribes a different position. He having prescribed a different position, government changes its position. I don't want to suggest, and I wouldn't suggest for a moment, that government changed its position having been influenced by Mr. Prescott, because I don't think that it is Mr. Prescott's voice that has caused government's change in its mind, in its attitude, in its approach towards the issue. I'll try to be fair to government and say this. I think the government took the legal recourse, the constitutional recourse, because we all know that under the constitution of this country, you cannot deprive any person of property. So that government clearly took the constitutional approach. The public of this country, including Mr. Prescott, has taken the moral approach. And the moral approach, embracing the historical questions and questions of the political values, questions as to what is right and wrong. So that government, while I am being fair to them in taking the constitutional approach, perhaps those who oppose government were reminding government that there's a moral issue and that good law is better law when it embraces morality. But I'm not here to prescribe to government how it ought to have dealt with the question. That is government's, that is their duty. Let them deal with that. But I am just exposing the anatomy of this issue, that government is in a state of confusion. And the confusion in relation to Drax reflects government's general confusion. So when people say that this government is strong and resolute, the evidence is not there. And this issue exposes the veteran nature of this government's approach to public policy. Government changes its mind too often. What they need do now, if they wish advice, is to join the constitutional issue with the moral issue, and to consult with the people of Barbados, and to come to a position that will be satisfactory to the gentleman in England, because his rights must be respected. Miss Ram's rights ought to have been respected. And we don't wish to live in a country in which you disadvantage or breach people's constitutional rights because they're wealthy and because you think it is popular so to do. That is a dangerous path upon which you're traveling. Yes, the rule of law speaks about no one being above the law. That is what it speaks about, and everyone must be treated fairly. So that government needs to go back on that. Government needs to consult. This high-handed approach, this singular approach to issues, and you're the strong person and you can make up your mind by yourself. As strong as you are, and as much ability as you have to make up your mind alone, you have conceded again. The Prime Minister of this country has offered a concession in relation to her consultant and in relation to the people of Barbados. This government, as I say, I repeat it, this government adhered to the Constitution. But this government now has a dilemma. Is it going to abandon the Constitution and focus exclusively on moral and historical issues? What is it going to do? What we advise this government to do is to join morality and law. Because ultimately, law is not good law unless it embraces justice. And you approach justice when you embrace morality. So the government, we invite the government to revisit the issue. We invite this government to cease to go into the public domain announcing decisions without consultation. This is a government of hundreds of consultants. Influencers. They're not using them. They're not using them. Sorry, right? Do the right thing. Do the right thing. Do the right thing. Do the right thing. Always do the right thing. It is not difficult to do, you know. That's our upbringing in Barbados. Our upbringing is that of doing the right thing. That is what our parents told us. And we're not changing now. So that governance and government is not that difficult. Do the right thing, as Senator Walters said. Now, I want to talk a little about crime. At risk that crime has become cliched. And what do I mean by that? Man dies yesterday. By 6:30, his body is discovered. 6:30 in the afternoon. So men are now killing men. They used to wait to do it at night. We now live in a country
Anytime.
in which there's no regard for human life. People walk up to each other now, shoot them. We had the incident in Sheraton a few years ago. Midday. That is what our beloved country has become. And you will hear a person saying, look, you can't blame the government for that. The government has resources to deploy among the young people of this country. And crime is always, well, not always, but crime is often related to people's economic circumstances. I'm not saying that government is there to hand out money to them, but government has a pivotal role in controlling crime in this country. The police. Government has lost, it seems, the police force. It seems that way to me. That's a dangerous statement, but I'm saying it. It seems to me that government has lost the police force. And I know that the police force has to a large extent lost the support of several young people in this country. And government had a moral and political and constitutional obligation to join with the police force. You get a sense in this country based on what we heard a few years ago during COVID.
Yes.
That there are persons in this country
Good Friday.
with greater access to government at the expense of the police. That's not defamatory. That is a political statement rooted in fact. And that incident by itself served to symbolize that decaying relationship between the government and the police. And whereas the office of the Attorney General is meant to oversee the police, a minister has been inserted into that office. And that minister's portfolio, that minister's responsibilities remain dubious. What is he doing in there? What does he do from day to day? So that you have a man lying in St. Philip yesterday in a fetal position. That's the part that hurt me. When I saw the video, he was in a fetal position. He went as he came in his mother's womb, and a phone is up by his face. And that is why I say crime must not be cliched. Every death is significant. Every death must touch us. Every death must hurt us. It seems that it is not impacting on the government. And you know what is government's solution to the crises among young people? Revelry. Give them effect. These mini stadia, they're calling them mini stadia. They're not mini stadia. They are going around this country fencing in traditional areas of recreation. My beloved Bayfield. Not St. Philip, man, but I love to watch my cricket at Bayfield. They have fenced that in, and I want to say this to the Barbadian public here and in the diaspora, that those fences have been built to transform those places into places of entertainment. That during crop over, it is quite possible, they can change their minds now, that those recreational areas will be made areas of entertainment, revelry. I suspect that is what it is about. and people will have to pay because you want to control the passage to the place. Yeah, and the young people will be paying, but government is transforming recreational areas where little boys and little girls can freely walk on to a playing field in their community. They no longer can. Why a fence? You don't need a fence. So I suspect the reason for that fence is that government wants to transform these recreational areas into places of revelry during crop over, because that is government's solution to the problem of youth alienation. Party, give them a party. That is the solution. You know, and our Calypsonians have to a large extent been silenced. Our Calypsonians, those of us who were in the 80s and 90s, we look forward to crop over.
Messages.
Not for the sake of revelry, but for the sake of the message, the protest. Our Calypsonians were our poets. Our Calypsonians were the persons inviting us to look at ourselves, to examine ourselves for all of our faults. Look at ourselves as a country. The Calypsonians in this country have been silenced. And the quality of Calypso, I put it all under the category of Calypso, the quality of Calypso that is now sold to young people is not one of protest anymore. It is one of profanity. The youngest children in this country, when I'm driving home, media, I see them at roadside. And we used to be in the house, although the old lady used to say, you can't sing banjo in here. But when we went outside and we had a chance, we were singing the calypsos. And they were wholesome. And there were words of protest. Now they're words of profanity. So that when you get into the ZR, or if you pass next to a ZR, you're not hearing words of protest. You're hearing words of profanity. And that is how this government has become complicit in the erosion of values in this country. Standards. That is how government has become complicit in the erosion of social values and personal values and moral values. That is how government has become complicit. So when August comes and July and so on, let them prove that they have not fenced in recreational areas, to fence in young people for the sake of revelry, which they see as the social solution to a deep problem of alienation, a deep problem that is afflicting the lives of our young people. We all had, Derek and I had, we weren't rich. No, we had upbringings in this country. Authority figures influenced us.
Community leaders.
Teachers, community leaders, police officers. We used to revere these people.
Yep.
We used to revere them. All the videos now, the youngest person is fighting with a police officer. I never saw that growing up. I never saw that. And that is why I've said, if we have a country in which people are fighting with police officers in broad daylight, and those persons believe that they have the right of appeal or recourse to a government, something is deeply wrong in this society. And so we offer a different approach in relation. We're not coming to tell you that we will solve all the problems, but our approach will be different from the approach of this government. You want me, I know. I know. You want me to talk about what is going on in the DLP. And it would be hypocritical for me to sit here and make no reference to it. All I will say is this. Now, the crisis in the DLP has become a national crisis. And it has become a national crisis because people care for the Democratic Labour Party. It has reflected itself as a national crisis because people have drifted away from the government. And people in Barbados want a representative against wrongdoing in government. And there are two mass parties in Barbados, the Barbados Labour Party and the Democratic Labour Party. Having betrayed the people of Barbados, the Barbados Labour Party government having betrayed the people, they're turning to the Democratic Labour Party. And it therefore hurts them that this crisis has erupted. And we feel that we must resolve it. We know that we must resolve it. I have a role. as leader, political leader of the Democratic Labour Party, my role is pivotal. But my style of leadership is one that embraces all of the energies within the party. And I think I said it on Sunday night, that we must not allow this crisis to cause ourselves to ignore the deeper crises in Barbados, the deeper crises of which I've spoken over the last few minutes. So that while we're resolving this crisis, we cannot allow ourselves to ignore what is happening in Barbados, but resolve this crisis we must, because we know we're hurting the freedom-loving people of Barbados. This is not about me, this is not about Senator Walters or Watson. This is not even about the Democratic Labour Party. This is about democracy in this country. It's about justice. It's about the right of people to oppose the government. And we have that heavy responsibility. And we are breaching that responsibility by allowing this crisis to reach the proportion that it has. That's what we are doing. Look, the nature of politics is that it involves rivalries. You can't be, as a leader, you cannot be insecure about that. You will have people in the party with you who are ambitious. That's natural. Nobody owns a party. Nobody should feel that they own a party or a government, as this lady feels that she owns Barbados. You will have rivalries in a party. And there are rivalries in the Democratic Labour Party. There are rivalries in the Barbados Labour Party. There was never anything as traumatic as when a former Prime Minister of 14 years over this country stood up in Parliament, in the Parliament yard, and accused the leader of his party of being a despot. That was a deep crisis in the Barbados Labour Party. So that, you know, what is going on now pales insignificantly with that event. Out of that event, a member was expelled. Don't forget these things. There were problems in the Barbados Labour Party in the 1970s, the rivalry between Tom Adams and Sir Harold St. John. There were. So that this crisis may obscure one's memory of those crises that afflicted the other party. They come and they go and they go. It is our responsibility as members of the Democratic Labour Party to ensure that this crisis passes. It is our responsibility to ensure that this crisis passes and that people will forget it. When you're in the moment, it feels like the worst thing. Trust me, the Democratic Labour Party has no choice other than to resolve this crisis. We have no choice. We're speaking about a party which is in deficit with the people of this country if we continue this nonsense. And I use the word nonsense. We remain in deficit. And we wish to restore our position of credit with the people of Barbados, knowing that this party has a mandate and a mission to restore this country to a place in which our young people, our middle-aged people, and our old people can be happy. That is our mission and that is our mandate. So that what is happening at George Street, the bloggers can have a field day and they can rejoice at it. The sycophants of the Barbados Labour Party can sit at ringside and applaud. We will ignore them. This is about democracy. And this is not only about resolving an internal crisis, but this is about resolving a national crisis. And as I've said, it is a national crisis because there's a large segment of this population that loves the Democratic Labour Party. A large segment. They respect the Democratic Labour Party. And they want to see the Democratic Labour Party thrive again. And that is why there's so much disappointment. But it is our responsibility to turn that disappointment into approval and acceptance once again. I know we can do it. I know we will do it. I know we must do it. Yes, over the last few months, I can say to you, truthfully, that there has been a resurgence of interest in this party. That is not to be contentious. I know there has been. I'm getting WhatsApps from all kinds of anonymous numbers. And those are registrations of disappointment. But people are disappointed because they have loved Unless you have loved, you're not capable of disappointing. And that's why our disappointment has upset them. We have disappointed them and upset them. And we intend to restore ourselves into the position of Barbados' party of first love. And not love for its own sake, but love because we have a history of serving the interests of the people of this country. I do not end any speech unless I remind people that the most significant social transformative change in this country occurred in 1961. It is education that filled this room today. It is education that has been at the heart of justice in this country. The young people need to be told this, that we would not have had a just society in the way that this society is just unless the Democratic Labour Party in 1961 said every child has a right to an education, not privilege, a right. And that's why the people of this country invest in us emotionally. That is why there are people who are deeply hurt by this crisis. It's not about me, it's not about Ryan, it's not about the councils of the Democratic Labour Party. It's not about the people of this country. It is about justice and democracy. And this party has a proud history in this country of bringing it to a stage and a state in which justice prevails. So we come to you today, citizens of Barbados here and in the diaspora, to reaffirm our commitment to democracy and justice, and that we will do that only when we become a party that functions without these rivalries threatening to pull the party asunder. We sit in agency for the interests of the people of this country, and we do so unapologetically. I have a responsibility as political leader to assist in the mission of restoration. As I've said, I do so with humility though. But humility does not mean that I'm apologetic. I will not be apologetic. It also means that I must be firm, that I must be resolute, that I must have a desire to ensure that this crisis is resolved. And I must be fair and I must be just. So today I am not going to be giving any individual response, any personal response to anything that was said to me or about me. I have come to the people of this country today to promise them that this Democratic Labour Party will heal in the aftermath of this crisis. I have come to this media conference today to assure the people that we will not be distracted in our mission to ensure that this government continues to be exposed for its financial wrongdoing with the public resources of this country. Because whether we fight or not internally, this government is rampaging across the public finances of this country. There are several examples. This government is rampaging across the financial resources of our beloved country at the expense of the poor among us, at the expense of those who cannot get their supermarket bills paid and their electricity bills paid. So that's the main issue. We will resolve it. But during the course of resolution, send the message to the Barbados Labour Party government that we will not be closing our eyes on their wrongdoing. Yes? So I suspect I have said enough. And that is where the conference will turn over to you. Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Colton Manzi, Nation News. Opposition leader, as you indicated, you have come open the opposition office and you are executing your role on opposing and, as you said, exposing the current administration. However, normally, traditionally, the opposition's office would be done under the guiding principles of the party, which in your case should be the Democratic Labour Party. But dare I say that the public is maybe somewhat confused as to what those guiding principles are, policies are, given the rancor on discord which currently exists within the party. First of all, could you shed some light as to how you would be going about this role as opposition leader and opposing and whose principles you would be following, given what I would have outlined? And also, if I may just add in this other question one time, given again, going back to the rank and discard, persons could maybe hard pressed in reposing confidence in someone as an alternative to government if they themselves can't get their own house in order. Again, what would you say to those persons who raise such a concern?
I believe I reminded this country, Colville, a few minutes ago, that within the term of the Barbados Labour Party in opposition, that there was one of the biggest splits in that party when a former prime minister attacked a current leader of the opposition. And he was a parliamentarian. And a few years later, they're in government. So that these things are never beyond resolution. I was making the point to you that this is not the worst. This is not the worst. You talked about principles. I began by declaring that all of us who sit here are members of the Democratic Labour Party. We're not strangers to the Democratic Labour Party. I can remind you that I say to you that constitutionally, I am the opposition leader, but I also reminded you that politically, I am the political leader of the Democratic Labour Party. I say that up front. And except that even as political leader, you must respect the organs within the party. And the Executive Council has a role to play. The General Council has a role to play. The President has a role to play. The General Secretary has a role to play. And the Democratic Labour Party remains, as far as I'm aware, a Democratic Socialist Party. And that has great meaning. And therefore, the crisis, as I considered that it was, will be referred to those councils in a democratic way. I said that. Well, I'm saying it now. Yes. I'm not a dictator. I'm not a dictator. Not my style.
You mentioned that between the two senators,
yes,
in terms of the portfolio
yes,
of government, it would divide up
yes,
between
yes,
two senators and yourself.
Correct.
In the lower house.
Since we are the voices in Parliament, and since we need teams to feed those voices.
Well, currently the president has a shadow cabinet. Are you saying today that has been disbanded?
You're using emotive language, not disbanded. There is a reshaping of things. We want those who have that weekly voice in Parliament to be stronger and to have teams advising them, because they have to stand in the Senate and speak. I have to stand in the House and speak. So I don't want to use the word disbanded. We're reshaping the organization of things so that we have greater access to the academic, intellectual, and experiential resources that are available to us within the party and outside of the party.
Pardon my ignorance, but reshaping, because you lead the process. I'm a little simplistic in the sense that
no, you're not. Reshaping. We are reshaping, physically reshaping it. Whereas we had shadow cabinet positions before, we are reshaping it into advisory teams.
Okay.
Now, that does not mean that Senator Walters would not ask somebody to make a public statement, because we recognize if a person is going out there calling himself or herself a candidate, we need to give that person exposure. So he's not going to be doing all of it. Senator Watson will not be doing all of it. We want to expose as many persons as possible to you, to the media, so that the public is aware as to what is going on in this party. It's no sense a candidate having assets and the public doesn't know. So we will be asking that person to gain exposure within the public domain. We're not interested so much in powers and principalities. We're interested in responsibilities. Yeah, that's what we're interested in. Yeah.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Are you finished?
Just to follow up on the same question. As far as I'm aware, the system you have outlined. That's one existence, and the shadow cabinet outlined by the Democratic Labour Party president. That's another existence.
I'm sorry that you have a difficulty with it.
Does the shadow cabinet, as outlined by the Democratic Labour Party president, does that still exist anymore in this new dispensation?
I just told you twice. It will be reshaped under the parliamentary leadership of 3 persons. Not a dictator, 3 persons. Senator Walters, Senator Watson, and your humble servant.
Yes, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Sir, Victor Lewis from St. John has a question for you.
He does?
Yes. And he's asking, what are your views on the implications of the cybercrime bill on free speech?
Excellent. Now, I looked at the cybercrime bill this week again. One of the dangers of the cybercrime bill, I think it is section 20. Aspects of ordinary conversation are being criminalized. It is now a crime under the well, it's not now, but if that cybercrime bill becomes law, it is a criminal offense, a serious criminal offense to insult somebody. I believe section 20, is it, Ms. Weeks, talks about insulting. Yeah? Look, I'm a politician. I have people who are Facebook friends. It's an interesting concept. Man called me to insult me so badly. A lady said last week, you're deceitful. I did not unfriend her. Give her a voice. No, that's an insult. She calls me deceitful. They're gonna go and charge her for insulting me. The point is, simple aspects of conversation now become criminalized, and it represents a danger to the people of this country. If a police force is allowed to go around this country and to go across cyberspace and choose selectively persons who have insulted somebody else, or somebody, as one of them said, ministers. One of them said, immature little fella, he said, oh, this is to protect ministers. And that was oh man, that was an interesting admission. That was a startling admission that the government was passing this law to protect ministers. So you can traverse social media, and if anybody has insulted a minister, he can find himself facing a fine, $70,000 or a few years in prison. That is the danger of the cybercrime bill. And if other countries have passed it, it is not a concern to us. What is a concern to us is that that cybercrime bill represents a threat on the rights and freedoms of the citizens of this country to express themselves freely in accordance with the Constitution of this country. It therefore means that a police force can arbitrarily pour across social media and choose persons for prosecution for the simple aspects of conversation, which are not pleasant, because people should not insult others, but it means that it gives the police force, the police service, an opportunity, a chance to criminalize insults uttered by certain persons selectively. And that is one of the dangers of this cybercrime bill. It is too broad in its condemnation of speech, far too broad in its condemnation of speech.
Opposition leader, you mentioned that the crisis has to be resolved.
Has to be.
However, absent is how? Could you shed some light on that?
I say that there are councils in the party. There's the executive council, and there's the general council. And the matter must be referred to those bodies within the party. I have reminded you that this party does not have a dictator as far as I know. You know, Barbadians have become used to the concept of maximum leadership. A minister came to the house on Tuesday, and in the middle of his speech, he pauses to say, oh, and he thanks the Prime Minister for bringing down World Cup prices. You hear a minister speaking, oh, and I refer this matter to the Prime Minister, and I thank the Prime Minister so much. So you get a sense of maximum leadership, and that concept of maximum leadership has been embraced by cabinet members who find themselves unable to function individually, so that you have a Minister of Agriculture who is now giving approval to the transformation of prime agricultural land to housing, and he is unable to speak on behalf of agriculturalists in Barbados. He's unable to speak in the interest of agriculture in Barbados. And I suspect it all has to do with this concept of maximum leadership, that even the members of cabinet have lost their right to an independent voice. And that is the danger. That is the essence of oppressive government in Barbados, that only one voice matters. This Democratic Labour Party will offer a different concept and style in government. And style is often related to substance. Style often reflects substance. And this Democratic Labour Party will not offer you only style in government in terms of fairness, but it will offer you substance, fairness in its substance. We are opposed to what Oinatha called despotism, and what some others will call autocracy. That is not our style. That is not our substance.
If I may go back to the statement you made about the police, I may go back to the
government having undermined the public's confidence in the police service. Correct. Yes, I say that.
Right. We forged the government forged a gang truce. I think
we
government that was gang truce.
Why did you say we at first?
Huh? What did I say we? I guess that was just a slip.
You ever heard of a psychologist called Freud?
Freud did a slip?
Freud did a slip. Okay. Press on, Calvin. We're not going to beat you in here.
Do you think that worked to the benefit of the police in this case, or did it?
I can't give any account of that transaction. I know nothing about it. I know nothing about it. The government has not been transparent as to how it has dealt with the truths. All we have heard is that monies have been paid out to certain people in this country. And I want to say to you, Calvin, that is a dangerous subject. That is a dangerous subject. Because a lot of relationships in Barbados, like the one yesterday, possibly, a lot of personal and social relationships are now regulated by violence. That is killing people. That is endangering people. That is putting innocent people under threat. So that if government has come up with some transactional scheme to deal with violence, I wish to stay far from it. Dangerous. Let government come and say precisely what that scheme is doing, what that peace program is doing. Let government come and say, let government in its obligation for fair disclosure tell the people of Barbados who is involved, what that scheme is about, who is receiving money, if people are receiving monies. Yeah. We don't know. We don't know. That is not our strategic approach to resolving crime. Resolving crime is long term. As I've said in a previous speech in the House, it is military, it is social and cultural, and it is economic. Some are short term, some are long term. The military option is obviously short term, but government needs to reshape its relationship with its public. Government needs to reshape its relationship with young people in Barbados. Calvin, I told you a few weeks ago, emphasize revelry as the paramount social activity to which young people incline. We don't mind young people having a good time, but put protest back into calypso and remove profanity and allow the churches in this country to thrive. Because the churches are disrespected by this government as well. Yes, the churches are disrespected by this government when the National Cultural Foundation is going to be disqualifying people because their artistic content is religious. That is an attack on religion. Don't we understand this? Don't we really understand this? Don't we understand what is happening in this country? Don't we understand that this is an oppressive government with a maximum leader? We fail to understand that. It is no joke. It is time that certain interest groups in this country stop lionizing ruthlessness and maximum leadership in this country, where ministers cannot make a decision unless it becomes referable upstairs. And then when it becomes referable upstairs and they discover that the people are not supportive of it, you come back and change it. You vacillate. This government is not strong. This is not a strong government. This is a government that is vacillating. This is a government that changes its mind from day to day. This is a government that went to Parliament with the cybercrime bill. This is a government that promised to reform the common entrance exam. Where is it? The people in this country were told integrity that this is the last year. And we confusing teachers and children in this country. They don't know when the last year is coming. Teachers have not been introduced to a reshaped curriculum. This is an incompetent government. And the media needs to be aware of this. So don't focus on the crisis in the Democratic Labour Party. Yes, focus on it. Focus on it. But don't lose your focus on an incompetent government that is blowing millions of dollars every week. 2 and 3 ministers out of the country on a private jet. Y'all don't know this? Go up by the airport and see. And champagne. I talked about the 67. I didn't tell you about the hotel bill. I didn't tell you about it. I have the facts, my friend. I don't wish Barbadians to die of a heart attack, you know. Yes, yes, please. Yes.
Position would have an office outside of the actual Parliament.
No, Worthing. I think
They had one down here too.
Reverend Adderley was at Worthing. The problem is, Ms. Weeks, is that the facility at Parliament Yard is not clean. It's environmentally unsafe. And I think I thanked Mr. Eastman earlier, Clerk of Parliament, for outfitting us with this very spacious surrounding.
My question is how accessible this would be to the general public? You're in the heart of town,
Yeah,
which is great.
yeah.
What's the purpose of it? Can you, clarify that?
Well, they chose it for us. We're just grateful tenants. I have a difficulty with the parking. We're telling people they can park up by the helipad, helicopter place.
We're going to make an arrangement out there.
Yes, the
So the
helicopter.
public, in terms of understanding,
Public is welcome.
public.
Public is welcome. The smallest complaint. When I was on my way here, Miss Weeks, a gentleman gave me some political advice. So I told him, I wanted to tell him, where the office is and come to the office. Already we are receiving a lot of information from within the public domain. As I said, they send me WhatsApps. I'm sure they send Ryan as well, and Derek. This belongs to the public. We want the public to feel welcome. Any complaint, any valid and legitimate complaint that is made in relation to government offices, but we will take complaints from the public.
The numbers are going to be ready before by weekend.
Oh, telephone numbers. We don't have telephones as yet, but everybody has a cell phone. Even Derek is going to give his cell phone number.
Yeah, definitely.
Corbett?
I think we should go further to the constitutional department provides for the issues of separate matters and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think.
There's organs and friendly parts.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I did mention to them that the various committees, the executive committee and the general council. Executive council. I will satisfy them by saying it will be dealt with internally. It will be dealt with internally. Look, it is not my purpose to come into the public domain and feed this matter as some salacious issue for the front pages of the Nation and Barbados Today.
That's right.
Yeah. Let the party manage its business. I know this is the age of social media, and people are justifiably more intrusive or more curious, but let it be dealt with internally. And let us not lose that focus, because the government is thriving on this. And while this is continuing, the government continues, as I said earlier, to rampage across the public finances of this country. Your taxes.
You talk about all these things?
Okay. Yes, please. Your media? No, only media. Only media. Only media. That's it. Cover, you ran out of steam. But thank you very much. Thank you very much, CBC Nation. Your nation too, man. CBC. You had no questions?
You want to wind up? It will wind up. going.
Yes, you do it right.
Well, at least on behalf of the office, leader of the opposition, his staff, members of the Democratic Labour Party who are with us, our supporters and our friends, well wishers, we'd like to thank the media for coming and to making the leader of the opposition go to the depths of his intellect and his strength of character to respond to the biting questions that are asked. And we want you to take lead from him and to keep focused not only on the internal squabbles of the Democratic Labour Party, but on the deep chasm that is coming across this country called Barbados. Once again, thanks for coming, and feel free to ask the opposition office for any time to a meeting with the leader of the opposition. And at any time, any member of the Democratic Labour Party officer, I'm certain that you can get in touch with them. We are not divided on that matter. Okay, we're not divided on that matter. We are one family with a problems in home, in the house. Me and my brother would agree for a little while, and he's still growing now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Derek.
Send it. Comments, yeah.